Hello everyone, my name is Lomanto, as you probably all know. This is my presentation. So about my research paper was about physical activity and different ways that you can get children and young adults outside and just doing different sports in general. So throughout my research paper, I looked up several different ways that kids can be physically active, healthy, and mentally healthy. Playing sports plays a good role in keeping your mind mentally healthy as well as your body. I also looked up variations of ways that parents and peers can get their kids into doing these things and giving them interest. So what I learned while researching is that there are a few chemicals that are released in your brain as you are being physically active. There's dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. So our first one is dopamine. It is a system of the brain that helps anticipate hope or pleasure, feel motivated, and maintain hope, as I said before. Norepinephrine kind of ties in with that, and it helps to deal with stress more effectively. And how it ties in with that is when you're working out, you start to feel hope, you feel motivated, you feel good about yourself, and that relieves your stress. You feel better, you feel all the weight, it goes away. Serotonin, it boosts your overall well-being, your feeling of well-being. It can also improve your appetite and your sleep cycle. And those two are very important things when you're being physically active, playing sports, and working out. You don't have to do them all. It's very important. Having a good sleep cycle, sleep heals the body in every way possible. It heals your body, your mind, and it puts you back where you need to be. Your appetite when you're working out is very important because if you're not eating the right portions and meals and stuff, it'll throw you all off. So my senior project was all about getting the youth back into the outdoors and being physically active. Many of our devices these days, like our tablet that we're filming on, that can be used to distract kids from actually going out and being physically active with different sports and games, just being with their friends in general. It's like, hey, I can just FaceTime my friend. And that makes it a lot harder for parents to encourage our kids to go outside because they just have these different distractions that they can use instead of doing stuff in person. It's like, no, I'll just FaceTime them. I'll watch basketball on TV. And that's what our problem is, and that's what I want to talk about. So that is why many of our kids in our society today are not getting enough physical activity. So what I did for my actual project is I took the 5th and 6th graders at the cul-de-sac school on a fishing trip to Winchester Lake State Park. We went to Ponderosa Point, and that is their recreational side of the lake. It has a playground, and back behind the bus there's a big pavilion. There's a bunch of benches in it, a bunch of lunch benches. And that's where we ate lunch. We fished right below that. There's a big point, and there's one dock. So I had 14 kids trying to share one dock, and so I had to kind of kick them out and spread them across the shoreline. Otherwise, we were just going to be in one big knot. But they did that on their own. We didn't have to parent them or anything, and it was great. They all made very well this expression. So the day of the project, once we arrived at 9 a.m. in the morning on Friday. I had a fishing game officer / biologist. He came up and he gave the kids a speech on species of fish in the lake, plant life in the lake, and why it's important how those two coincide. He also explained to us and the kids how the boat works, not the boat. Anyway, so but what you can't see is behind over here. Right about there is a big generator, and that powers an electrical current that goes out to a rod, and they dip it in the water, and it shocks the water and the surrounding fish in the area. And what they can do with that is they can tell if the fish are healthy, they can tell if they're not, if the plant life is good or bad in the lake, because if you cross-contaminate the lake, it can cause a lot of problems with the fish's, their biology and their health, and it could really affect their way of life. Just like when you cross-introduce another species of fish into a lake that is not supposed to be there, that can really harm the other fish in the lake. because then you just introduce another natural predator, they bring in plant life on them, and it can really mess up the ecosystem. So our fishing game guy that came out, he was kind enough to supply us with 2 big stand-up fishing pole holders, and he gave us a bunch of fishing poles for all the kids, and he also gave us a tackle bag with a bunch of lures in it, which was really awesome because we had none of the supplies to do this. I would have put up poles myself. I did not have them. So he was kind enough to do that for us, and it was really awesome. So after fishing for a couple hours, we fished from around probably 9:30 when he left to noon. We had lunch at the pavilion I talked about before. We had hot dogs, chips, and drinks and whatnot. So after we were just getting done eating, I had another guest speaker come over that actually works at the lake. He is the Winchester Lake State Park head ranger. He came to the pavilion and talked to the kids about what he does at the lake and what he has to do on a daily basis. Alright, so steps to my senior project, I had to choose a class that I wanted to take. That was really hard for me because I knew most of the kids in the 5th and 6th grade class. They're not my buddies or anything, but I just know the kids pretty well. And I thought they'd be great kids to take on this trip. The second thing I had to do, I had to get permission slips for the kids to go, because like I said, we went on a Friday, and the reason we did that is to avoid interfering with the their work time in school, and I didn't want to take that away from them. So we chose to do it on a Friday, and it worked out really well. Most of the kids wanted to go, they all got the permission slips in on time. If not, I was bugging them about it, and then they did it. So it all worked out. Another thing I had to do is I had to contact Fish and Game and ask him for the use of the Lomanto and the tackle. And I also asked him if he wouldn't mind doing a speech or presentation for the kids. And that was all fine with him. It worked out really well. So another thing I had to do is I had to ask PTSA to use money for food and drinks and our bait. Like I said, we got hot dogs, chips, drinks, random stuff like that, chips. And then we got power bank and worms, and that was all provided through PTSA. So the reason I'm dropping you kind of midway in a fishing trip in basketball is I wanted to incorporate a part of my life and my senior paper into this. And this has to do with all physical fitness. So basketball is a great sport to get the kids involved in, and this is why I chose this sport to do it. Basketball has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. I've been playing it since I was knee high to a grasshopper. I was 9. But it's one of my favorite sports and one of my favorite hobbies. Playing basketball for so long has brought me a lot of knowledge of the sport. It's been really great playing all these years. But being in such a small school, I've had the opportunity at lunchtime. We'll all eat lunch, then we'll gather in the gym before we did it. So that was like last year. But we gather up here and we get just a big game basketball going. And there was some kids that would get frustrated, and they were frustrated at their performance playing. And I noticed that, and I tried to help them. And when you're helping someone, and then you see them improve from what you did, and they're not just mad at you for telling them something you already know, it's a great feeling. You feel accomplished. Because they actually listen to you, they put out the work, and they accomplish something. Now they feel good about themselves, and that's going to make them play better. So, one thing about basketball, it's a great sport. It teaches teamwork and trust. Teamwork and trust is very important in basketball because you need to work together, you need to know your team, and you need to trust your team to know what they're going to do, where they're going to be on the court, and how they're going to perform. Basketball is also an extremely social sport, which means you must communicate with your teammates while you're on the court and off the court. And what I mean by that is when you're on the court and you're making a pass or you want the ball, you got to talk, you got to communicate, because someone might be running in another area, and you got to say, hey, I want the ball, give it here. Basketball is a very which is a great thing for young adults to do when young. They get close to other people and it socializes them. And then there's your start to not being on your screen all the time, not being on your iPhone all the time. You're out there with your friends because you enjoy it. So the more you learn about your teammates, the more you learn about their playing style, and the easier it is to play with them. And what I mean by that is you're on the court with them every day, practicing, playing a game. And you learn where they're going to be, how they're going to move, and you get to know your teammates really well, so you don't have to anticipate where they're going to be. You know where they're going to be. You know how they play. Playing with your teammates a lot also helps them. It really does. It helps the whole team. Because once you see a teammate struggling, you're there to help them and improve their physical and mental well-being while they're immersed in the sport. Another thing to just tie off this, basketball is also a great cardiovascular workout, like I just explained. You're constantly running, you're pumping your arms all the time, passing, shooting, whatnot. Your legs are always pumped. And basketball is just a great all-around sport for kids to get involved in. So, this is supposed to be quick here. This is Henry, Tillman, Logan, and Richardson. So Henry is right there. He's got a God bio. He's trying to set up. He's got some power bank in his hand. Torrance bio. Jameson's here in the background. Somewhere on his rod. And then Tillman's right here fishing. And then Logan is right here. I'll tell you what. Tillman was slaying the fish that day. He was dragging them in, and it was impressive. Logan did good too. He brought in a couple of big ones. We've got Richardson here helping Javian. I butchered his name. He's helping Javian out. He had a big spool like in his line. Richardson was helping him untie that. And Phil Pony's back there doing explanations to the kids. I don't remember who was back. And then after Javian got his line untangled, he's down here fishing with Jameson. They're both fishing off the point there. I don't know if you can see, but there's 3 other kids across the shore. Because they weren't catching anything over on this dock, it was getting hogged up. So they ran over to another shore. I'm not kidding you, they ran. They ran to the other shore. They wanted to catch fish. They were excited. And so they ran over there, they started casting because they thought they could get out of here where these guys are casting and catch fish. That didn't work out. So they went to the other shore. I'd like to take this time to thank a few people that have helped me along the way. Mr. Phil Pony, one of our great judges there. I want to thank you for helping me with my project and ideas, organizing it, and all around just being a great mentor to me. It means a lot. I know Mr. Richardson is not here, but I'd like to thank him for coming on this trip. It was an amazing class. They were all super polite, respectful. I'm not kidding you, these kids, one of them would catch a fish and the other one would praise them. Without being told, they would catch fish, the other one would turn around and go, good job, great job, high fives. And it was amazing to see that without, having to provide input to them to do that. And I would also like to thank Jim because he came up, even though he was super busy after school that day, even though it was a Friday, he drove the bus up for us, and so he had to leave and come back. I respect that a lot, and it's very nice. I'd like to thank PTSA for listening to my description of my project and approving the costs spent on the trip. It was very appreciated, because without that, we would have kind of been in a rut. I'd also like to thank, even though they're not here, I just feel like it's needed, the fishing game guy that came up and for attending and presenting his presentation and lending us the tackle and the motor poles. It was very appreciated, and the speech was amazing, and how he pulled up his boat even though he couldn't even launch it away because it was low. So that was really awesome and very appreciated. So last but not least, I'd like to thank the Winchester State Park Ranger who came up and gave a speech after we had lunch. I'm very thankful he attended because I believe that would be a great job for these kids to have once they're of age. witness something new. And any questions, comments?
Do you think this will influence your future parenting style when you're raising your kids?
It might. I've been around kids a lot throughout my life, so I've learned how to deal with them. And if my kids are anything like how these kids are, I'm in good hands. I'll tell you what.
Good.
What, in addition to influencing your parents, what about influencing your future in kind of maybe a profession?
As a profession, I'm not going to go into anything like sports-wise. I'm too short, and I'm broke, so I can't really do it. It's a hobby. No, but in my career, I will be physically active. I plan on going into heavy equipment operator, so I'll be constantly moving heavy stuff, and I gotta walk, and all this other stuff. I will be physically active, and I plan to be when I'm not on the job as well. You know?
They took both my questions. But what was the most enjoyable part of it? I mean, you talk about playing basketball and kind of being a role model or what was your favorite part of your project?
Favorite part of my project was probably watching the kids have fun. It was a windy day. At some spots you'd go in and out. The kids were always smiling. They were all having fun. And some of them weren't catching right away like the other ones were. So I brought two poles. I brought my fly rod and my bait caster. And I didn't know if anyone of them knew how to work that. So I just threw out my bait caster with the lure on it, and I'd set the hook on the fish, and I'd just give them a run. Like, give it in! And then I'd sit there and help them. And so I don't want anyone to feel down in that, because I brought them there to